This is False Start, a college football podcast for everyone and everyone else. I'm your host today, Cody Williams, content director at FanSided.com. I am not joined by John Buhler today. He and the Arizona State podcast are across the pond in Germany. Hope they're having a wonderful time, and I'm giving him a little break, going solo like a cup until he returns the night of after the first round of the NFL draft. We'll be coming to you semi-live with 3 yards and a cloud of punt. But before we get there are still some college football things happening. I don't care. We're doing a Masters recap show. Not seriously. We're not doing a Masters recap show. Shouts out Rory though. Back to back, only the fourth player to ever do so. Pretty damn cool. Wonder if the major monkey is now fully off of his back and he can go and really try to put himself on golf's Mount Rushmore. But again, this is not a Masters recap show. We actually have some college football stuff to talk about, so let's take advantage of that. And we're going to start with our first and 15 today, which is, that's my coordinator. No, not that's my quarterback. That's my coordinator. And we're talking about the Miami Hurricanes. They have locked down Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator, and Corey Heatherman, the defensive coordinator, 2 extensions. Obviously, this feels like a big move from Miami to lock up 2 very key pieces to why they were able to get to a national championship game while they were against Indiana a year ago. Or this past season, I guess is probably the better way to say it. Wasn't a year ago. It was like 4 months ago, 3 months ago, whatever. Regardless, keeping both of these guys in the building is huge. We saw the impact that Heatherman had on the defense. I believe I saw somewhere in this reporting that he took the defense from the 70th ranked unit in the country to the 5th ranked unit in the country. And yeah, it helps when you have the talent that they did, and they got to replace a lot of that, particularly up front. But I think a lot of that has to do with Heatherman as well, because a lot of that talent was still in Miami when they were the 70th ranked defense in the country. So I think retaining them is a very big deal for them. To that point, I do think that keeping these guys in the first place was a big win for them this offseason. And the fact that they're extending them is a big deal. These are 2 guys who I thought Buhler and I both thought would be head coaching candidates. And the fact that they didn't get a job. Maybe that had something to do with them playing in the national championship game and the timing of it all. Regardless, though, keeping them in the building for 1 year was even a big deal. Extending them, obviously an even bigger deal, because no, it doesn't guarantee anything. If a head coaching offer comes calling, like if both of these guys, if Dawson and Heatherman repeat the success that they just had at Miami, yeah, people are gonna come calling for them. And if it's the right program with the deep enough pockets, no new contract, no new buyout, no new amount of money that they're going to have to pay to get this done is probably going to stop them if they identified Heatherman or Dawson as the guy. But it does make it more difficult. It does probably limit the options of schools that would be willing to pay that. And I think for Miami, that's a very big deal. You're not going to, like, brain drain is a real thing in college football, especially when it comes to programs that are competing in national championship expectations and at that level, which Miami obviously is under Mario Cristobal. Brain drain is going to happen. Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, Ryan Day, we've seen it. Brain drain is going to happen. But if you can do anything to delay that brain drain, to make that brain drain a little bit harder, especially with 2 very key pieces in Heatherman and Dawson or of that level, then you should do that. And so I'm really bullish on Miami taking this step to extend not just one of them, but both of them to keep them in the building, because I think both have had a really positive effect, not just on the program, but I think on Mario Cristobal as well. We've sung the praises of Mario Cristobal's evolution as a head coach, how he has taken himself and become the ultimate CEO type, become the guy who is the face forward leader, the guy who sets the culture, and then not really worrying about what's happening on the sides of the ball as much. Not scheming that stuff up or taking as big of a hand in it, because he has coordinators who are as talented as Dawson and Heatherman are. So when you have that, it makes like making sure you retain that, making sure that we're going to keep this moving forward is a very big deal. Still think Miami is going to be very, very damn good in the 2026 season. Think you're probably foolish if you pick anyone other than them to win the ACC. Again, no guarantees. Miami did win the ACC this past season. They got in as an at-large, not as the ACC champion. So, doesn't guarantee anything, but Miami is definitely on the right trajectory with these coordinators in place. And moving forward, I think that Keeping them around as long as you can is going to be very good for the Canes. Speaking of guys that they need to keep around at a certain spot, we're going to move on to playoffs. You kidding me? And we're going to talk about Alabama's A-Day, their spring game. Um, wasn't televised, but if you had paid any attention to social media and follow anyone who was in the Alabama football sphere, you'll notice that there was a little bit of a discrepancy between which quarterback looked better. Keelon Russell kind of stole the show from Austin Mack. Threw four touchdowns, 229 yards. I believe it was like 20 or 32 that he was on the day. Held up under pressure. Yeah, they had the non-contact jerseys on. Like they weren't giving him blows, but he evaded and eluded pressure as best you can tell in that type of environment. Seemed to have a good grasp on the offense for a guy who just turned 18 years old. Like, I know I've sung Keelan Russell's praises, but like, I understand the age factor in all of this. But it leads me to my point, and why this is the segment is playoffs, you're kidding me, is because I've said all along that Kalen DeBoer in Alabama can't afford to play it safe coming into the 2026 season. Safe as Austin Mack. He's the guy who's been in the building, who has the veteran rapport built up with this staff over recent years. He came with DeBoer from Washington, has sat and waited his turn behind Penix, behind Ty Simpson, and so on and so forth. So I understand every reason why Austin Mack seems like the safer bet. And you know what? He probably is the safer bet. I don't think Kalen DeBoer in Alabama are specifically at a point where the safer bet is the best bet for them. And I say that because I think that you make a safe bet if you're worried about what the upside of the other option is. I think you make a safe bet when your job feels pretty secure and that you're generally going to meet expectations. My fear with Austin Mack is that the safe floor or safe ceiling, whichever you want to call it, for Alabama with Austin Mack is below the bar of expectations in Tuscaloosa among Alabama fans. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not an Alabama fan, so I can't speak to that. But I do know that Alabama has a pretty proud tradition of football. I do know that Alabama has a pretty proud fan base that doesn't necessarily care for how their season ended this past year, for being on the college football playoff bubble in a lot of capacities. I'm pretty confident in saying that. And I think Kalen DeBoer is a good coach, but I've had my doubts since he arrived there of is he the right fit at Alabama? And though I know there is risk of kind of bottoming out to some degree if you play Keelan Russell, you're only going to bottom out so hard because Austin Mack, because of the new transfer portal rules, is there. If Keelan Russell comes out and doesn't look particularly good in game action, then you bench him. Then you put Austin Mack in and you keep that safe floor to kind of mitigate the risk of bottoming out. But what if Keelan Russell comes out there and looks like the second coming? What if this is a Kelly Bryant, Trevor Lawrence type of situation we're talking about here, where you're giving them both reps early in the season against lesser competition, and Russell clearly has the higher upside? You gotta go with the Trevor Lawrence in that situation and not Kelly Bryant. Kelly Bryant is Austin Mack. Keelan Russell is Trevor Lawrence. I think to me, that just seems like where this situation should be trending. Because if Keelan Russell's looking this impressive, and like, let's be clear, he's looking impressive against the Alabama defense. He's not looking impressive against a local high school team in Tuscaloosa. No, 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 no. This is the Alabama defense, one that's projected to be one of the better units in the country. And he's at 18 years old coming out there and looking like this. To me, that is a signal that Keelan Russell should be at bare minimum getting splitting reps early in the season with Austin Mack. You should not just hand the keys over to Austin Mack because I truly feel like Austin Mack is your one-way ticket to going 8-4 or 9-3. It's not a bad season. It's also not a season that's up to Alabama standards. And I like I'm not an Alabama fan, but I will definitely admit like it's a lot more fun when Alabama I can take seriously. And I feel like I haven't taken them as seriously as I did previously under Nick Saban, which, again, filling Nick Saban's shoes is not an easy task. Don't get me wrong. But I also don't feel like DeBoer has done an adequate job of a difficult task to this point by Alabama standards. We'll see though. Keelon Russell definitely generating some buzz coming out of A-Day. We're going to move on, stay in the SEC with It Don't Mean Enough. And I was fascinated by some quotes that Kirby Smart had. He was before their spring game, he was obviously talking to the media. And I'm going to read this quote verbatim because I don't want to mess it up. Um, I don't know that we have the highest paid players, but we will have the players that get the most reps. And that quote was in a discussion about NIL spending at Georgia. And he's basically saying that they're not going to be your Texases, where you're wherever you want to look in terms of total NIL spending. But what they are going to do is have guys that that they've developed in-house from the highest level of recruiting, and they're also going to take transfers who they believe they can get another stage of development at and pay the rate, maybe not the top market dollar to do it, but pay to fill their needs there. That's interesting to me because yes, Georgia has they're Georgia when it comes to recruiting. You know what I mean? Like they're not hurting for talent that they can get into the building from the high school ranks. So if you're going to develop those guys, hell yeah. Um, Second thing that does stand out to me though is I don't think it's just a quote about recruiting. I think to some degree it's finding the guys that are experienced and aren't just a projection. Finding guys that you believe are developed in the right ways to do what you want to do. And I know Indiana's NIL budget is huge, but this feels like a page from Curt Cignetti's playbook because you look at what Indiana has done under the 2 years of Curt Cignetti, and yes, they've hit on some big transfers. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm not saying, and the money that they've spent is substantial. It's near the top of the sport. But I also think that their roster had a hell of a lot more work to do than Georgia's did. More importantly, I also think that Curt Cignetti didn't just go out and get a guy because he was high priced and top of the rankings. He got guys that fit what he was trying to do in Indiana, and obviously it worked. I think there are a lot of talented quarterbacks, maybe some who have more raw talent than Fernando Mendoza, which I understand is strange to say considering we're talking about the likely number one pick in the 2026 draft. But like in terms of raw talent, there are probably guys that project higher than Fernando Mendoza that could have gone to Indiana for a bag. They probably don't. If they don't win a national championship, or if they do win a national championship still with Indiana, they probably don't do so as decisively as the team that Fernando Mendoza led. And I think that's emblematic of getting the right guys in there, getting the right guys in there that are developed, who are ready to buy into the culture, who are ready to execute what is being put before them. Now, to be clear, my one concern with this when you turn it on Georgia is that we know Buhler is not the biggest fan of Glenn Schumann as a defensive coordinator. Mike Bobo is as milk toast of an offensive coordinator, and I don't even mean that negatively. I just mean like he's about as dead average of an offensive coordinator. I mentioned brain drain earlier. We've seen brain drain at Georgia, and I do wonder, yes, you can bank on the development of this talent. How well is your coaching staff developing that talent? Because that's not a Kirby Smart issue on him specifically, unless you want to peg it on him for not making staff changes that he maybe should have made. But regardless, that would be my one concern with Georgia operating in this way. But having said that, I think that we've seen that this formula is Kirby Smart taking some signals from other programs who have been successful recently. Just my 2 cents on the matter. But we're going to move on to our next topic for the day, which is talk Porter to me. Last week, Bill Connolly, our old friend who never short on content from old Bill C. I like Bill Connolly. I think he's a very smart guy. But I also think he give some wild opinions. So he ranked his best transfer portal classes of the 2026 offseason, and he had some thoughts. Number one on this list is the Oklahoma State Cowboys. I'm on the record on this program of being very high on what Oklahoma State has done under new head coach Eric Morris. But let's not kid ourselves. He basically took the North Texas roster and said, come on to Stillwater, or at least the key components of that roster, and said, come on to Stillwater. That's an improvement for Oklahoma State. That is a vast improvement for Oklahoma State and the disarray that Mike Gundy had left that program in. I'm not arguing that for a single second. But you're going to call this the number one class in the country? You're going to call, let me make sure he doesn't say favorite. No, and he does say, he says favorite. So it's not the best, but even calling this your favorite, eh, that's still pretty close to best. And I think this is a portal class that gets you from point D to point C, point D to point B, maybe if you're Oklahoma State in terms of upgrading your roster. But it doesn't get you to A. And I think there are some classes that get some programs to A, which brings me to my next point. At number 2, he has Indiana. I think considering all that they were able to replace, that makes a lot of sense having them that high. I don't understand Colorado at number 3. You got some good players. Gideon Lamprin, middle name ESPN, in case you did not know that. Some talented players, but you're still banking on Juju Lewis. You still look a little small along the trenches. Not sure how much better the Colorado got. But that leads us to 4 through 6, which is Texas Tech, LSU, and Miami. Brother, how's that not 1, 2, 3? Like, I understand they're the bigger name, so it's easier to make them 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it is easier to make them 1, 2, 3 because these teams are all teams that can win a national championship. That's what the transfers that they got differ from the rest of them. You got maybe the 3 best quarterbacks that transferred here that we're talking about. Brendan Sorsby going to Texas Tech. We got Darian Mensah going to Miami. We got Sam Levitt going to LSU. And that's not even touching on the other key components of this roster that they were able to add. So the more you look at this, the more it's like, if I'm talking favorite classes, if I'm talking best classes, if I'm talking which teams benefit the most from this transfer portal class, which is how I would write one of these rankings. And maybe I'm just way off on what Bill C is trying to do here. But if I'm ranking portal classes in that way, that's my 1, 2, 3 in some order. And honestly, I think you can nitpick the order. I think having them lumped together is a very smart thing. I think where Bill Connolly has them lumped together does not make a whole lot of sense to me. Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? Nothing really that stands out. It's a lot of the rest of the programs that we're going to see. We got UCLA at 7, Kansas State at 8, West Virginia at 9, FAU at 10, Houston at 11, Wazoo at 12, 13 at Kentucky. I would probably have Kentucky a little bit higher. 15 Texas. You could probably make the case for that being higher with Cam Coleman coming in, Raleek Brown coming in. Like the weapons and the holes that they were able to fill with this portal class, I think are super impactful. Overall, like I think that a lot of I think we're like, if you want a big takeaway, I think Bill Connolly really valued the idea of a nothing burger of a team from the 2025 season becoming a something burger. When you look at a West Virginia, when you look at a Kentucky, when you look at all like different programs, Kansas State, who had some shortcomings last year, UCLA, another one, Houston, who had some moments but came up a little bit short, Cal, even. Like when you look at a lot of these programs, it was teams last year that even if they were middling, like you never like expected a whole lot more of. And I think the chance for them to elevate with these portal classes is what Bill Connolly really valued. Virginia Tech on here is a big one. Auburn being on here is a big example of that. Programs that were a little bit lost last year now seeming to find their way, even if like the upside isn't necessarily there. Oklahoma State being at 1 is a very good indication that that's how Bill C was thinking. All due respect, I love his work. I think he's great at what he does. We differ in some places. That's okay though. Disagreement makes the world go round. And there might not be any disagreement in Madison, Wisconsin, because he gone eventually. Wisconsin athletic director Chris McIntosh is now leaving the Badgers program to take a job with the Big Ten. Cool, good for him. Does that mean anything in terms of Chris McIntosh to me? Honestly, no. You know who it probably means a hell of a lot to? Luke Fickell. Because brother Luke Fickell is lucky he has a job already. They didn't want to pay his buyout. McIntosh didn't want to pay his buyout. Cool. McIntosh ain't gonna be there. And frankly, though, if you look at Wisconsin, it doesn't seem like a whole lot is going to change from the dismal 2025 season that we just witnessed. And if that is the case, that is not the standard of Wisconsin football. And before you dig yourself a hole in Madison that is bigger than you can get the next coach to get you out of, you need to nip it in the bud. I would venture to guess that the new athletic director, whoever that will make sure that is the case. Think Luke Fickell is now as lame duck of a head coach as you're ever going to see in college football. He was already on the hot seat. Like, he's been bad enough that there's no way his job wasn't in jeopardy to start the 2026 season. Having said that, there was a world where Wisconsin, if Chris McIntosh was still in charge, where Wisconsin wasn't necessarily willing to pony up. Got a new AD coming in there, wanting to leave their fingerprints in the program, wanting to make an impact right away. There is an easy way to do that, and it is Luke Fickell. Get rid of Luke Fickell. This isn't a hot seat. Like this might as well be Wisconsin starting the season 0-3, in my opinion. Like the season hasn't even started, and things are breaking poorly for Luke Fickell at this point in time. And not to say like I let me rephrase this. I honestly think that's a really, really good thing for Wisconsin. Shocker. I don't think Luke Fickell is meant to coach at Wisconsin. I don't think he's as bad a coach as John Buhler does, but few do. And that also doesn't mean I think he's a good coach at this point, based on what we've seen. Might just be a G5 head coach, which is fine. You can make a lot of money, have a great career doing that. Don't think you're the guy at Wisconsin. That's for damn sure. And we were already walking into the season with the feeling that Luke Fickell was a lame duck because of how hot his seed was coming into this. It's not kind of. He is a lame duck at this point. I would be, choose the right dramatic word here. I would be flabbergasted. I would be appalled if Luke Fickell still has a job come the end of the 2026 season. I don't see things turning around for the program. You've got a new AD coming in with Chris McIntosh taking another job with the conference. I mean, the pathway could not be clearer to doing this, minus the money factor. But again, new AD, you're probably willing to leverage some spending early on if it means making meaningful changes, to leaving your imprint and your mark on the program. Moving on to our final topic of the day. As always, be recruiting. We always recruiting. Always recruiting new subscribers to False Start. Please like, share, subscribe. Gonna say it again here in a minute, but why not? But we're talking about Ryan Day in Ohio State. He recently did an interview, and it's a really good interview. We don't get. Let me make sure I get the name of the podcast right where he did this. Not Just Football Podcast. Apologies for getting that off the top of my head. The Not Just Football Podcast. It's a great interview overall. Pretty wide ranging on topics. Interesting. I would say Day is a lot more open than we see a lot of coaches get these days. And one way he was doing that was being pretty damn honest about Ohio State's recruiting strategy. When he said, and I quote, "But I think it's just across the board at Ohio State. There's an expectation that when you come here, you're going to be a first and second rounder, regardless of your position. And if that's it, if we don't win games and championships, they're going to find a new coach. Well, if you're not a first or second rounder, this probably isn't the right place for you." End quote. He's not wrong. Ohio State's had a hell of a lot of draftable talent, highly drafted talent, come through the doors since Ryan Day took over. Um, if that is your recruiting strategy, though, that kind of does the opposite of what he's talking about here, where he's kind of putting a target on his back to some degree. Because yeah, you got over the Michigan hump this past year, but brother, you hadn't won a whole lot of those games against those people up in Ann Arbor. Mm-mm, you sure haven't. How many national championships you got, Ryan Day? Just the one, right? Cool, 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 cool. You still got a lot of that first and second round talent you're talking about, though. So perhaps it's on the guy who's not coaching the talent. I'm being a little facetious here. I'm gonna be very clear. I think that Ryan Day doesn't get the credit he deserves as a head coach. I think that Ryan Day is now in one of the best positions coaching wise that we've seen in a long time with Matt Patricia in the way that Ohio State defense looked last year with Matt Patricia. And now you've got Arthur Smith coming in there. You've got an NFL coaching staff working under you. Um, I know that Arthur Smith is somewhat of a punchline when it comes to NFL circles, somewhat deservingly so. Neither here nor there. But I know he is somewhat a punchline. Brother Chip Kelly's been a punchline in the NFL too, and he led that. He's the offensive coordinator that led Ohio State to a national championship. I don't think Brian Hartline was very good at his job as an offensive coordinator. Hell of a recruiter. Don't think he's much of an offensive coordinator. Um, the upgrade from Brian Hartline to Arthur Smith is going to be substantial. Feel very confident saying that. And maybe that's why Brian Day feels comfortable pumping his chest out a little bit like this. Having said that, is a dangerous game to play when you start hyping yourself up to this degree, talking about the talent that you have, talking about the, pressure, kind of balancing the pressure on players and coaches or whatever. It all sounds good if everything goes well, and it very damn well looks like it's going to go well for Ohio State in the 2026 season. They are one of the national championship favorites, deservedly so. Hell, they might even be my pick to win the national championship. It's April. We're not at that point yet. But if it doesn't go that way, if there's some stumbling blocks, if you trip over the hurdle every now and then in the 2026 season, it's going to put a hell of a lot more heat on you, Ryan Day. And I'm not saying he's going to be in danger of losing his job. He won a national championship. He made it back to the college football playoff. Like, I'm not saying Ryan Day is going to be on the hot seat, but I am saying that some of the less rational fans in Buckeye Nation might have some harsher things to say about Ryan Day. But having said that, I do appreciate Ryan Day opening up and giving us quotes like this because we don't see that in college football. And whether or not you agree with the quote or not, I really like hearing stuff like this. Really like coaches like opening up on their mentality of how they operate within the sport. Always cool to see. And it was cool to see y'all for episode 267 of False Start. You can follow me, Cody Williams, on Twitter or the X, the Everything app, at the Sizzle 20. You can follow the show at CFB False Start. You can drop Buhler a follow at Buhler118. Like, rate, listen, subscribe, review. 5 stars, Apple, Spotify, wherever you can leave a rating. 5 stars. Subscribe wherever you can. We're trying to hit these numbers, man. Trying to make something out of this. We've been at it for a while. We appreciate everyone who tunes in and listens along. Y'all mean the world to us. If you got a question, drop a line. If you're a new subscriber, definitely drop a question. We'll shout you out, answer any questions you have. We're here for y'all, man. We love we wouldn't talk about college football as much as we do in the middle of freaking April if we didn't love you guys. We will be back later in the week, but take it easy. We love you guys because this is False Start.